Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Scott Wurzbacher, and today we're going to hear the story of a small town boy who came to believe that all things are possible and set out on a life journey to prove it. This is a story about listening to the inner fire, seeking out guidance along the way, and trusting in one's own abilities to achieve what others consider impossible. Justin Rosales is here with us today from Charlotte, North Carolina. He is a strategist at Elevation Church, a Christian entrepreneur, and co-author of the book Becoming the Iceman, which he wrote with the one and only Wim Hof. Justin's story of adventure has taken him to many far-off places, with Wim as his guide, where he tested his own limits and pushed past boundaries. It's a story about really getting to know yourself through adversity and the discovery that we're all capable of so much more than we ever thought possible. Justin, welcome to the campfire.
Thanks for having me, Scott. I'm excited. I'm grateful.
I am so excited about this. And I think I want to just jump right into this book that you got to write with Wim Hof. How awesome. As soon as our good friend Lizette introduced us, I immediately bought a copy of the book and just devoured it. And I was just like, I just couldn't get enough of it. It was so good. And I just wonder if for listeners, you could tell us about this book, Becoming the Iceman.
Yeah, sure. So Becoming the Iceman is a story. It's half of it is written by Wim and half of it is written by me. Wim's half of the book is his journey from when he was a kid all the way to his adulthood and telling the story of how he became known as the Iceman. All of his journeys from running a half marathon barefoot in the snow in the polar circle, being in a tub full of ice up to his neck, some of the research that they've done medically on his body to be able to figure out like how he's able to do what he could do. And so that's his life's journey in there. My half of the book is how I was able to study with Wim and over the course of a year to 2 years, learn how to do what he could do I was at a college at a time. So he was like in the Netherlands and Poland doing all this training. And I was trying to figure out how do I do this in America in a college dorm and try to practically learn some exercises too. So my half of the book was my journey, taking what he did and kind of like synthesizing it so that it make it my own, that anybody else could do the same thing. So the book together is a collaboration to show how anybody could push past perceived limits to do what seems impossible. And so the last chapter of the book here, we both go to Finland and he does a 10K barefoot through the snow, attempting for the fastest time with Guinness World Record, and I do a 5K barefoot through the snow for the fastest time. And it was kind of like the culmination of everything together, trying to achieve, felt like the impossible.
So good. And I remember I read the book before you and I had our initial conversation, and I was like, I had just read the part about the 5K and you getting a record for the fastest 5K running barefoot in the snow. And I was so excited because I just read that the day that we spoke. And so it was all fired up. Congratulations on the record.
Thank you. Thank you. I do have to say, it says it at the end of the book, but it's an unofficial record because we lost the video footage in Finland. But for us, it was like incredible. And since then, so many other people have attempted the same record. And so for us, it was like, let's just show that it's possible. And then other people continue to do the same.
It's amazing. So the book is called Becoming the Iceman. Wim Hof is known as the Iceman.
Yes.
But in this book, he's not the only one that becomes the Iceman.
It's true. Yeah. I try to follow in his footsteps, his cold, frozen footsteps.
Yeah. But I think that's the cool thing about him is that he's very outspoken about the fact that this isn't something that this isn't the special gift that he has. Yeah. I wonder if you could talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. Quick backstory. So when I was a kid, I heard this, I don't know, my mom told me this thing, she may have heard it on the radio, but that there was somebody that was traveling in a train car and temperature there was like 60 degrees. But when they got out, they found that this person had frozen to death. And they were trying to figure out, how did this person freeze to death in 60-degree temperature? It's not freezing. You shouldn't be getting hypothermia. And so some people deduced that they like psychologically thought it was colder. And so their body temperature dropped. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. If you could freeze yourself thinking it was colder than you thought, can you keep yourself warm? And so that kind of like planted in my mind as a kid. And then fast forward to the future, I see Wim Hof on the Discovery Channel, and they are framing him as a mutant, that nobody else can do what he can do.
Mm.
And as I was watching this video, I'm like, I don't know. Like as a kid, I thought this could be possible. And so it started this whole journey of trying to figure out what that could look like. And in conversations with him and connecting with him, he was just really just trying to show anybody can do this. You just need the decision, the willingness, the mindset to be able to go into the uncomfortable, to seek discomfort, to step into the unknown and show that there's more that's possible if we're willing to actually continue to take consistent steps forward and believe. So it's been interesting.
I remember you talking about that story of the man that froze to death in 60 degrees in the early part of the book. And I did pick up on that. That's very cool because like, how old were you when that, I mean, that was like way before that you even knew who Wim Hof was.
Oh yeah. I don't know, maybe 10. I was really young.
Yeah. But that's something that stuck with you.
For sure. Yes.
So like hearing about Wim Hof, like immediately kind of grabbed you and that story that had kind of stuck with you since you were 10 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that you and I had talked previously about the trigger, because the first iteration of the book didn't have a lot of the context of why I was doing what I was doing. And I put it back in this version, but I don't know if you want to go there right now, or you want to talk about it later.
Come on, let's go. This is a great day for a conversation. Let's just go.
Sure. So the book that you read, I believe, is the 10-year anniversary edition of the book.
Yeah.
And so in the first iteration of the book, I'm like, okay, I just want to be able to help this reach as many people as possible. Both Wim and I did. And so knowing that it would go all over the world, I kind of cut out a lot of stuff that was like my personal beliefs, my what was really driving me, because I just wanted to give people the facts. But it was like I was omitting the facts about myself, like the stuff that people could relate to.
Yeah.
What ended up leading me to choose Wim as like the mission that I should pursue in this season is, people love the Avengers, people love superheroes, all that. People have dreams of flying, and I think it's cool. And even just as a kid, like, a lot of us, we just wish that we had the ability to do that. And growing up, people go to church sometimes and you hear like, oh, there's potential in you. You have the ability to do anything, like put your mind to it, all this type of stuff. If God is in you, you could do anything. If God is for you, you could do anything. And it's like, okay, cool. But what does that actually mean? Because growing up as a kid, I kind of copy and pasted the faith of the people around me. They're like, don't do this because of whatever, or you should do this because of, and I'm like, I don't understand that. But I was also afraid to challenge it because I don't know, it's just people that are older than me. People have more life experience than me. So I just kind of locked in and believed it until fast forward many years later, I'm at this summer camp. A lot of people go to different summer camps. This one was a Christian summer camp. Mm-hmm. And my friend and I were leading this little devotional for the kids. These kids are like maybe 10 or 11 years old. I'm in my later teens. And my co-counselor says to the kids, hey, did you know it's okay to question what you believe? And that rocked me, because I was afraid that if I questioned my own beliefs or the faith that I'd taken on of other people, that honestly, like maybe I'd go to hell. Maybe like I would never, like what would life look like for me? Yeah. And so I really started to dig into that a lot more. And so a few weeks later, he shared the Bible with me. He shared a Bible verse with me, and it's in John 14:12. Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he says, I tell you the truth, anyone who has faith in me will do what I've been doing. He will do even greater things than these, because I'm going to the Father. And so I had a little bit of context of what Jesus did in the Bible. He's walking on water. He's healing a lot of people. And if he's saying to his disciples, you could do greater things than me, I'm like, what is that? And so like, I wanted to start to put the Bible to the test, whether or not it was like the actual context of what he was saying. It's like, all right, well, let me just try to test this. And so I started looking for an opportunity to do something that was impossible or greater than what the normal person could do. Yeah. And so when a couple of weeks later, that same friend that said that question sent me Wim Hof on the Discovery Channel of this guy running through the barefoot in the snow. I'm like, I don't know. I honestly, just being completely candid with you, I felt like it was a tap on the shoulder of like, hey, God saying, this is the thing I want you to lock in, to pursue. And so that kind of opened the door for me. And that was like the driver. And so when I went back to do the 10-year anniversary edition, I put all of my initial reasoning for why I did what I did, the whole journey of faith in there, because this whole Iceman journey for me started with testing the Bible and wanting to see if God could really do the impossible in us. And that was like, I know we all have our own reasons for wanting to step out in faith, but that was truly at the core of it all for me.
I love that. Thank you for that candor. I think it was actually going to be one you alluded to. It was going to be one of my questions later on, because in the version that I read, which is this 10-year anniversary version, like at the beginning, you almost give this sort of confession that you left out a lot about yourself in that first version because there was some fear maybe of offending people or not,
Right.
not being sure what people might think. And so, I mean, part of this whole journey for you is really discovering like truly who you were. And I think it's so cool that
Yeah.
like as part of this evolution of the book, you were able to bring even more of who you are into this next iteration of the story. So, I guess while we're on that topic, and maybe we'll go backwards and then work our way forward here, but like what was that like for you to like you wrote this great book, I mean 10 years ago, and then the or more than that, but then when 10 years later you had this amazing book, but then you were even able to improve on it even more by bringing even more of yourself into it. So I guess I'm just curious what that was like, that continued evolution of bringing yourself into that story.
Yeah, man, that's great. Yeah, 10 years was a long time. The most common question that I would get, because people would know that I wrote the book, and when I first launched it, when Wim and I first put it out there, I mean, not many people knew about it. Not many people knew about cold
Yeah.
plunges. Not many people knew about like Wim Hof. He had a lot of world records, but it's one of those random world records, like the longest fingernails. Like you don't really, it's one of those weird things no one really thinks about. But then as soon as Wim, the whole Iceman thing went mainstream, it really blew up, and a lot of people started asking us questions, and they're like, "Oh wait, no way, Wim Hof." And it was this interesting dynamic because people then started asking me, "Well, like, do you still do that stuff? Do you still like talk to him? Do you still connect with him?" And I realized, like I would feel guilty too, because it's like, no, I don't hang out with him all the time. It's been 10 years. But it's interesting because like if you were to ask anybody 10 years ago, we're probably not hanging out with the same people we hung out with 10 years ago. Maybe there's like those best friend people that you're
Yeah.
still connecting with, but there's this evolution. And so what you go through maybe a decade ago, it's like ingrained in you. And so the things that I learned with Wim, the cold training, how to be able to stay calm in extremely cold temperatures, all of that is still infused into every part of who I am. And I can still run out in the cold and do all that stuff. I don't need to take a cold shower or an ice bath every day. But there's so much that I learned in who I am personally, but then also like the biggest thing with the whole all the cold training is how to stay calm in extremely stressful situations. And I know so many people would love that ability with high amounts of anxiety after going through a worldwide pandemic. The ability to stay calm in extremely highly stressful situations is so valuable. And so I've been able to take that into new seasons of life for me. I know that there was for me the Iceman days where
Yeah.
I spent 5 to 7 years of my life doing all things Iceman, trying to, I know you read in the book, but I went to California to be able to train with Tibetan monks to figure out how they could achieve this inner fire, because the Tibetan monks, they would sit on the tallest mountains with cold, wet bed sheets on their back and be able to warm themselves up internally and evaporate the cold water from themselves to stay warm. And I was like, okay, that's really cool. Let me learn how to do that. But then it became, okay, but to train like they do, you have to be sitting there. Like that's how you generate the inner fire, the warmth inside. And I'm like, okay, that's awesome. But Wim is running half marathons. He's not stopping every few feet, sitting and then warming himself back up. So there's something different there. So it became this journey of, let me figure out how Wim does it. So I reached out to him, connected with him, and became this journey. But then it continued to evolve too, because it wasn't just, oh, I'll go train with Wim once. It became like, how do we make this a daily habit? How do we make it easy so that even if somebody doesn't have what Wim has access to, like he could just go out and cut a hole in the ice and then jump in. If I were to do that at a college campus at Penn State, where I was originally at, I would probably get, arrested for possibly public intoxication, but I'm really just cold training, but now it's much more acceptable. So it became this journey of like evolving and trying to stack the experiences I had in the past to figure out my way forward. Like, what can I do with what I have? And so as we go through the whole Iceman journey, it became, okay, let's publish the book. And now let's go talk to people. Let's jump on podcasts. Let's continue this journey. What is the next steps after that? And so Wim's life started to go in a different direction. My life became, okay, I published a book. What is next? I'm still teaching people how to do this. I'm still talking to people about it, but what is next for me? And so I would say, you talked about like what has happened after that. It became for me, I would say, like the elevation day. So my faith started to kind of, okay, God can do this crazy impossible thing through me. I want to help other people figure out how to do that for themselves too? What does it look like if somebody else with a similar passion in medicine, like if they could figure out how to be able to tap into that and do the impossible, could they help cure cancer? Could they help people in a way that no one would even think previously possible? So I got super excited about that type of stuff. And so for me, when I call it the elevation days, it was really like, okay, let me lock onto this concept of faith and figure out what is next. What happens when we believe God for the impossible? And so the church that I'm a part of now, Elevation Church, was started by a couple, Pastor Stephen and Holly Furtick. And the first book that he wrote was called Sun Stand Still, which is all about audacious faith. And it blew my mind because it was a very similar passion. Like, what if you believe God for the impossible? What if you believe that you can do the impossible if God is within and in you and working through you? And it's like, I'm like, I resonate with this. Let me lock into this and see what's next. And so it began this journey of me trying to figure out, how do I live that out? I'll take the season from the Iceman stuff and kind of apply it to there. So there's like a lot of things that happened in that season over the last several years that made me say, okay, I think I need to go back into the original version of the book and put like everything that I've learned this 7 years of that 7 years of season back into the book so that it can really help other people figure out, like, okay, maybe I don't have access to somebody like Wim. How do I figure out what my next step is? Like when you are faced with challenges or like the doors seem to be shutting, how do I still take a step forward? Is it a sign? Is it not a sign? What should I do when everybody is telling me I shouldn't do this? I can't do this. How do you continue to take that step forward? And I feel like that's what I was able to bring back into the book that wasn't there before for me personally.
Hey everyone, it's Scott here. Did you know that the members of my real estate team, W Realty Group, are listening to their own voices that call to adventure by setting big goals? Some of those goals include planning trips to Bali and the Kingdom of Bhutan, buying investment homes, and running the Chicago Marathon. At W Realty Group, we support and encourage these big goals and want to help turn them into reality. We're currently looking to add new members to the team. If you know a great real estate agent in the Charlotte, North Carolina area that would benefit from being part of our team, please send a text, an email, or give me a call. And know that when you support W Realty Group, you're also supporting this podcast. Thanks for listening. I love that so much. It's such a great evolution. And you and I did talk early on about sort of these three distinct phases that have kind of made up your life's journey and all of this so far. And I want to hit on those. There's two things that you said that I just want to dive in on, because just for people listening, you said a lot of this with Wim, you learned how to stay calm in stressful situations.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if, like, from a process standpoint, however you want to talk about it, but for people's context, can you talk about how this cold exposure and this breath work helps somebody to stay calm under stress? Like, can you help connect the dots and how that happens?
Yeah. Let me do very practically first. So there's a part of the book where when Wim and I were originally connecting, it was through email. And so he would try to teach me how to do these things, like go put your hand on a cold rock and keep it there until you can't anymore. Or go for a cold run in the snow barefoot. And so, okay, I'll do that. And I did that one time. And there's a story in here where I almost got frostbite from just listening to that. And so it's like figuring out, how do I do that in a way that is safe? It makes sense, because I almost shut the door on myself completely and said, I'm never going to do this again. And so I had to build up this gauge, or like this own tolerance or understanding of what to expect, what was my threshold, get close to that threshold, take a step back when I needed to move forward. So for me, practically, I needed to figure out how to stay calm in extremely stressful situations in the cold first. And so what I learned was that when you go into the cold, there is, and this is just me tracking it for myself, because Wim wasn't sharing this with me, but when you first go into the cold, there's this loud talk in your head that says you immediately need to go out. So let's say you step into a cold shower, you're freaking out, you're hyperventilating, I can't breathe, and you feel like you want to get out. Everything in your body is saying, get out. So that's like, you could call it like stage one, where it's just kind of like the immense shock and you want to get out of it as quickly as possible. If you stay calm, and a lot of people just don't push past that, but if you stay calm and try to relax, you can get to stage two, where that cold shock wears off, your body starts to relax, you don't feel as much panic, and you're like, oh, I can do this. So stage one to stage two is like one of the most, I would say, important things for people to realize, not just in the cold, but in life. Like, okay, yeah, there's the initial shock, but a lot of people will normally just go in the other direction. But if you're willing to figure out, like, and make a decision, I'm going to stay in this, you can get past to the next level. And so that's what I learned in stage two. You can stay calm. Then there's stage three, where you start to get like this tingling feeling in your toes, your fingers, and there's this sense of intuition that it's like, okay, I think it's time to get out. Then there's stage 4, where like the tingling sensation starts to go away. You don't feel it anymore. That's when it's like, okay, on the verge of hypothermia, on the verge of frostbite. And that's when I realized, okay, this is dangerous. It's time for me to get out. And so I learned this in myself after multiple iterations of putting myself in the cold. And I learned that each time I was able to kind of like get past the panic stage quicker, going to stage 1 to stage 2, but then also stay in like the calm state even longer. So it's more of like, if you're training for a marathon, it's not just jump in and figure out how to do it in your mind. It's like, I need to be able to train for it throughout time and repeated exposure and consistency, but also have the mental state to say, I can do this. I can push into it. But it has to be like that continual decision of, I'm going to choose to be here and continue to move forward in a way that's safe and makes sense for me, and not just throwing out everything else out the window. But yeah, does that make sense?
It makes 100% sense. And so we've had another guest on the show, Frank Wiseman, who did a Wim Hof experience in Poland. And he came on and talked really more about the health benefits of cold exposure and some of the things that happen internally in your body, more from like a physical wellness standpoint. And I just find it so interesting because his story is so very different, with that focus on sort of health and wellness. And your story is more about like the mental side of it. And so because of both of you, I have been doing ice baths and I've been doing cold showers. And I know, for me personally, like, I know exactly what you're talking about. As you get into the cold shower, your mind just goes off, like I can't do this. No way. It's freezing. I'm getting out. And I think the thing is, when you start to recognize that, like, those thoughts are almost a physiological response. And when you begin to expect them, like, I'm going to get in this cold shower and my mind is going to tell me you can't do this. And so it's almost like that, that expectation that it's coming. And so you have to overcome it. Yes. And so it really is amazing. Like I'm a huge fan, and it's like, and I guess I'd ask you, cause like for me, it's only been a couple of weeks, but it hasn't gotten any easier. Every single time you get into that cold shower, it's horrible. Every time. It doesn't get easier.
Yeah.
But it gets easier the longer that you're in it.
Yes. Because you know what to expect when you're going to go into cold shower. But like you said, it is easier the longer that you're in it. But there is a way. So like a cold shower in itself, running cold water strips all the heat from you. If you're like, let's say one of the exercises I have in the book, it's like, get this giant bucket, fill it with ice, put water in it, and then maybe some salt, because it could drop the surface. You could drop the temperature of the water quicker. So if you were to time yourself, like figure out what the temperature is and time yourself, put your hand in, you would have the initial shock. It'll go away. You're like, okay, that was stage 1 to stage 2. So lock how long it took you to be in stage 1. Going into stage 2, and like start to like take the time on those things. Then even if you wait like 10 minutes, do it again. That time would go significantly faster to go from stage 1 to stage 2. And you can stay in even longer, not to a point of hurting yourself, but you'll just realize like, oh, I feel good. This is fine. Like I can actually do a lot more. So you get, one of the things I love about the cold is you can train yourself to deal with it better and more quickly and see very quick results.
It's really amazing. Okay, so the second thing that you brought up was, and this was really more just a thought, but it seemed like in a lot of what you're doing, you're taking like these things that you've heard, and I might even say like in certain ways, some of these things are like story or myth or something that you're trying to like prove. Like, I mean, you talked about like, I want to prove some of these things that are happening in the Bible, or some of these other stories, or these things that this guy, the Iceman, has done, or this guy that froze himself in above freezing temperature. Like, these are stories, but can I see if they're real? And I guess I'm just wondering, like, if for you, was there an underlying sort of skepticism that said, I guess, was there a skepticism that said, like, I don't know how I feel about this. Like, let's see what's behind this.
Yes. Throughout the whole Iceman journey, and there's so many different things that happened. So let's talk about skepticism. So no one believed that the stuff that I was doing was right or made sense, because I'm talking to somebody through email in a different country. And when I'm about to go over there, they're like, Wim was like, wire me money. And which is, you go back 20 years and people like, that is the sketchiest thing. You're going to lose all your money. You're going to go through fraud, all this type of stuff. But that wasn't it. That wasn't it. So even just the first time that I went to go fly to be with Wim, I was flying to Amsterdam and we were going to go to Poland, right? The week before I flew, a plane went down with people from the Polish government, and it was like this big scene. It was like everybody told me, hey, it's a sign you shouldn't go to Poland. They're going to be in an uproar. It's going to be crazy. You shouldn't do it. And so I thought, like, okay, is this the right thing to do? Is this a sign? Like, how often do planes go down with the Polish government as soon as, like, it's just too crazy coincidence, right? So for me, I had the skepticism, especially as everybody was telling me this is the last thing in the world that you should be doing. But I also was a little guarded because I knew that the stuff that I was doing was a little crazy. So I only shared it with people that were in like the sphere of influence that I trusted. So like my family knew, my girlfriend knew, and my best friend knew, and maybe like two other people. My parents, I kind of like filtered it. They're my parents. They want me to be safe. They want me to be okay. My girlfriend is just trying to keep me safe. But even my best friend who was kind of introducing me to the Bible, he was still a voice of encouragement. And I honestly just went to God too. I was like, look, if you can do anything, shut this down so that I don't go. Like, I'm just going to continue to move forward and trust that you're going to be there. And if you don't want me there, I know that if you could allegedly make the sun stand still in the sky, you can, I don't know, tear up a plane ticket or maybe making my plane not go off. So I just continued to move forward until it was a definite no. And so I didn't get the no. So let me fast forward to when I'm like, not that trip, but another trip. I am climbing up the mountains in the Spanish Pyrenees with Wim Hof. At that time, this was going to be the final chapter of the book. We were supposed to climb Mount Blanc, which I believe is on the border of France and Italy. And as I am flying over there in summer, there is this avalanche that kills all these people. And so the path to climb Mount Blanc is no longer there because it killed all these people. And so Wim and I were going to go up in sandals and shorts, no shirt. And then that plan went to, we just no longer an option.
Right.
So instead, at the time where I didn't have like a cell phone with access to internet or ability to text, Wim and I go to Spain instead of Italy and France. And so my parents, my family have no idea where I am. I'm in a completely different country, in a different place that I said I was going to be. And now Wim and I are climbing up the Spanish Pyrenees. It was a mountain called Monte Perdido. And there was this place there where you're like, it's like climbing up a football field's length on solid rock, both vertically, but then like horizontally too. And there's like this giant, it's not giant. How big would I say it is? It's probably like this sticking out of the wall, and you have to hold on to it and grip. And there's like a 6,000 foot fall, right? And there is no, like, we didn't bring all these harnesses and stuff to keep us safe. So I'm literally holding on to the edge of a mountain, climbing up these poles. I'm not a rock climber. Again, small town kid. I'm climbing up this thing with and I'm sweating. I have like this backpack on, and I'm like, okay, I am going to die. So the entire time I am praying. I'm like, God, maybe I was wrong. Maybe all of this is wrong, but please keep me alive. If this is what you want me to do, you brought me this far. I'm just trying to trust you. Just don't let me die. And so literally it felt like every step on that mountain to get to the top so that we could be in snow and just be able to like do something that was crazy that I never thought I would be able to do before. Like, God, just help me get through this. So there was a lot of skepticism, especially looking down at my death, like potential death. But we got up there, and it was at the top of the mountain for the first time where I actually presented the idea to Wim of, let's write this book together. Let's show other people that they could do the same thing. Let's show that they could push past perceived limits and achieve the impossible that's inside them too. And I don't think that if I ever challenged what everybody else said and kind of listened to what I felt like was happening to me internally, that I would have ever gotten to where I am today, or even just to be able to write this book.
I do. And one of the things that I heard you say earlier, that this was a quote, you talked about how previously you said copy and pasted your faith, or you copy and pasted other people's faith. And then someone gave you permission to question your own beliefs. And I thought that was super cool. In fact, I wonder, because I'm going to regret if I don't get a chance to come back. One of the things from the book was, like, in your early days, you talked about being a kid that kind of didn't fit in. And then you started going to this church, and you met people that gave you encouragement, and they told you, hey, if you lean into your gifts, then you can really be kind of the best version of yourself, or be the best that you're capable of. And so this led you to ask the question, well, what are my gifts? And then it seems like you kind of went through this phase where you started asking questions like, who am I? What are my gifts? I wonder if you could talk about that process, if you remember that.
Yeah. I mean, as a kid, my wife and I were just talking about this yesterday. It's like, as a kid, she's like, how come we don't really ever get invited to stuff as a like as a couple. I'm like, honestly, my entire life it's been like that. I've just been different, where I don't necessarily get invited to birthday parties to go hang out with certain people, but people always trusted me personally, like that
Mhm.
they could talk to me. And I realized, I was like, why can't I be like everybody else? But there was just something that was unique about me that people were like, you can help people stay calm. You're very peaceful. You're a great listener. And I just kind of pushed back against that as a kid because I always just wanted to be the popular guy that was, great and always invited to everything. And so I heard this, I don't know if it was a quote, but somebody had said within the last year to me, if you want to figure out like what your superpower is, what your secret superpower is, start to listen to the voices around you of what people are encouraging you about. So people have told me, Justin, you should start a podcast. Justin, you should read audiobooks. There's something about your voice. Like people just like to listen to you, all these things. I'm like,
I agree with that one, by the way.
well, I appreciate the opportunity to be on this podcast. But it's that's one of the things I started to lock into. So I got to do some more voiceovers. But also people were like, Justin, you seem to have the ability to not take no as your final answer. Like you're resilient, you're persistent, not stubborn, but like kind of always optimistic. Like you always, my dad said I should be a lawyer when I was a kid. And I'm like, I don't really want to argue for a living. But then I realized I had the ability to kind of outthink situations. So the more impossible a scenario seemed, the more I felt like there's something here for me. Like, I don't know what it was, but there was something inside of me that always felt like I needed to challenge it and that I
Mhm.
could always find a way to achieve it and to figure it out. So I would lock into things, man, for hours. Let me give you an example of even in my adult life. I told you there's the Iceman days and then there's the elevation days. For me, I was trying to figure out how to move our family from Pennsylvania to Charlotte, which is the church that I was a part of. And I had heard that there was, Jesus in the Bible, he fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. And then I'm like, okay, that was cool. Jesus, great. It's Jesus. But then I heard that the pastor of this church in a book that he wrote had also fasted for 40 days. And I'm like, oh, so we could do that too. Not that it inspired me to do it, but it also created like, oh, if somebody else could do it, maybe I could do it too, which again, Iceman stuff. If Wim Hof could do it, maybe I could do it too.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, well, let me see if that will increase my faith. Let me see if that'll increase my dependency on God. And maybe God will show me the door that I'm supposed to take next.
Yeah.
So I started on this journey I was only going to do it for like 3 days, but it turned into 42 days of me reading. Like I was listening to the Bible at the time, but then also fasting. So I didn't eat food. It was, it was a juice fast. So I did only liquid juice for 42 days and 42 nights. And in that time I listened to the entire Bible.
Wow.
But for me, it was like, I so much believe that God can do the impossible in my life and in the people around me. I saw it in the Iceman days. And if I could do that, if God let me do that in the Iceman days, I feel like he can help me figure out a way to get to this city that I feel like every door is shutting. So let me lock in, let me show my dependence and that I trust in him by fasting. So those 42 days were rough, but it was another one of those things. It's like, I'm willing to do whatever to see the impossible happen in my life, but not just for me. Because, okay, for me, whatever, but I really want other people to know that they could do the impossible too. That's really the thing that I'm locking into, because the Iceman stuff, yes, it's cool. But again, I'm not doing this daily. I wanted to do it so I could show other people that they could do the same too. The fasting thing, it's like, okay, I'm going to do it. But also, I know that people will shut down if they hear no one time, or if they show up and the doors are locked, or if they come after hours. Like, I want to help people realize that they can have a resilience and consistency. Sorry, I'm getting really excited about this.
I'm loving it. I'm just drinking it in. Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like, it was annoying in the beginning, but I felt like I was able to, like, people perceived it as annoying. Like, Justin won't give up. But I felt like God was able to take like that raw thing as I started to lean in and question and ask people, like, in people that were going through trauma, I was able to just be present and listen and help steer them in another direction. I don't know how I got there. I think it was probably trial and error, but I think it also just became me just trying things.
Yes.
And figuring out what consistently worked for me. Not consistently, but like the majority of time, and like listening to that voice and walking in it. I still copy and paste it. I still made a lot of mistakes, but it wasn't until where I felt like I could truly question my beliefs and build a new foundation and kind of lock into that. Because when that point happened, that's when Iceman days took off. That's when everything took off for me for the rest of my life, is when I realized that I could let go of everything that I've been told from everybody else and start to figure it out by myself, dig into the Bible, but then also have my own journey of faith through, walking with Wim Hof.
Yeah. So thank you for that. So I have just heard you talk about letting go of what other people were telling you, essentially that you should be doing. You should be thinking this copy and paste of faith. I also heard you say listening to your own voice, like,
Yeah.
this inner voice. And we talked about that early on, this inner voice. And I think it sounds like for you, like letting go and listening to the voice were kind of like the more you let go, the more you were able to listen to the inner voice. Is that fair?
Yes. Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about, again, I think this was before you met Wim, and it's related to this inner voice. In this case, it's the inner fire. You went and you talked about it. You went and studied with Tibetan monks to learn about this thing called tumo, which translated is inner fire. And I guess one of the reasons why I love that so much is we're Inspire Campfire.
Mhm.
We're all about listening to that voice inside that calls us to adventure, listening to that inner fire. So I would love to hear about like that experience and anything you gleaned from Tumo, from about the inner fire that listeners of this podcast would enjoy.
Yeah. When I came across Inner Fire, it was studying the Tibetan monks. And at the time, they didn't really train anybody in the United States. And so it became this journey of figuring out how I could talk to a Tibetan monk. And there was this one stray Tibetan monk that was flying out to California. I saved up my money as a dishwasher at Penn State and booked my first flight. Like, I've never flown anywhere by myself. So me going from Pennsylvania to Cali was like, what is happening right now? But I went. And so as I was at this like 2-3 day seminar with this Tibetan monk that was training several people, he was talking about Buddhism. He was talking about like, this is kind of like where it's been rooted. This is technically how you do the practice. And a lot of it was kind of infused with like his own beliefs or also like the Buddhist beliefs. And as I was digging into it, even as like a learning Christian, I had to take what he was saying and figure out how it applied to me personally. I didn't necessarily want to compromise the beliefs that I was now building up foundationally, but I
Yeah.
wanted to see objectively if what he was saying could actually still happen in me if I figured out a way to apply it to myself. And so I did. So like one of the pieces was like, you need to believe from Buddhism, you need to believe that you're kind of transcending into like this woman spirit. And I'm like, I don't necessarily believe that. But there was like certain exercises you did while sitting there and like holding your breath and moving it around in your stomach and like arm exercises. I was like, let me try that. And so I did that. And I was also kind of like praying internally. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing right now. I'm in Cali. God, if you're real, just kind of like help me see what's going on here. What am I supposed to do next? And so by the end of this exercise, like the temperature in the room was like 50 degrees Fahrenheit. I felt like it was 80 at the end of it. Like I was sweating, my shirt was soaked, all that. So like it worked. It worked. So I was able to take what somebody else was saying, apply it to myself and figure out how it could work within the framework of my understanding. And I was able to achieve the inner fire. At the end of the story, I told you, I was like, great. It works if you're sitting down. That doesn't necessarily apply to the overall goal and vision of what I wanted to do with what Wim Hof was doing, but it was a step. It was like, okay, like I could take what somebody else is teaching and figure it out how it can work for me. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So, Justin, for you, how do you experience that inner voice?
It's a good question. So for me, and I'm just going to just continue to be as authentic and honest as
Let's
I can.
go.
For me, I feel like it's more of the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
because let me go all the way back to Justin in the Iceman days. There would be this idea of like the next thing that I should do, and the pastor that I'm a part of, or the pastor that had kind of like helped inspire me throughout these last years, he had said like, if you don't know what to do, go back to the last thing that God told you to do. And so for me, the Iceman thing, right? In those days, that's what I locked onto. I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do next. Yes, I got to finish my college classes. Yes, I need to be able to figure out how to pay my loans. But the thing that was outside of that felt so unique that I needed to lock into, the Iceman thing, I just felt I needed to continue to move forward. Now, sometimes it was as simple as just book the plane ticket or just go and work, be a dishwasher and get the money so that I can pay for the plane ticket when the opportunity comes. And so it was like just the simple things that sometimes didn't even make sense. Let me give an example of what that looks like today. We are in this season. I would call it, my wife and I are like in the giving season days.
Phase 3.
Phase 3.
Yeah.
There is the Iceman days. Then there was the elevation days where my wife and I felt called to be a part of this church and moving our family here. And then now we feel that the mission that my wife and I want to lock into, that we've committed to locking into, is figuring out a way to be able to live off of 10% and giving away 90% of our income. And so this has been a journey for us over the last 10 years to be able to get to this point. Every year we feel challenged and encouraged to increase in our giving to our local church. And we continue to do that. But also, as you continue to give, as you continue to sacrifice, that also means that you have less to live on, obviously, but also you need to find new ways to think, new ways to be able to live off of a budget. And so I'm saying all this because in the season that we're in right now, last year at this time, my wife and I felt like we wanted to move because we were living in South Carolina, which was probably about a 45-minute drive to where I was working. And we felt like we needed to move to a slightly bigger home so that I could be closer to work, my wife could be closer to my work, and that we could also host people in our home. We wanted the people of our church to feel like they could come and be comfortable.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to do this, but we had also did not have a lot of money to be able to do this. And so we actually sold our old home, and we had a decent amount of money that came from that. And so we put that in a savings account. And this old home that we were living in, we had only lived in it for a year. And so I had learned that when you buy a home and you don't live in it for 2 years, at least in the state that I was a part of, you have to pay capital gains tax on any profit that you make. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm anticipating paying all this money when time comes for 2024 taxes. And so we get to this point at this year where my wife 6 months ago left her job and was trying to build a business. We were trying to build it together because we committed when we started this business, any new profit that we'd make from it, 90% of it we would give to the church, and then 10% we would live off of. So still committed to it, right? We're not going to compromise that. We have the savings from selling the home. And so we get to the point where my wife's applying for jobs because now the savings is almost gone. We built the business, but still need to be able to have a steady stream of income. And so we are down to the point where it's like we don't have any more money for rent, right? And also tax season is here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have no idea what to do. I'm praying. Like, I was this guy that was climbing mountains and do all this Iceman stuff. And now I'm like, how do I even afford rent? Like I came to this point of, am I going to compromise what I feel like we feel called to continue to give at the percentage that we're giving? Or do we like pull back from that and just say, like, we just need the money. We need to be able to pay for rent. So my wife and I made the decision, we're not going to compromise the percentage that we're giving right now. We still feel called to do that. And so what ended up happening was the voice came back. What is the last thing that God told you to do? I felt like God told me to do my taxes. So random. I'm like, I don't want to do my taxes because then I will see the amount that I need to pay from this capital gains, right? Okay. So I get frustrated. I just say, okay, God, I'll just do my taxes. So random. But I'm locked into this mission of the 90-10. So I do my taxes. About 2 weeks later, I get this email from our tax guy, and he's missing the capital gains thing. And I'm like, okay, well, I go back to him. I'm like, hey, you're missing capital gains in my taxes. Can you tell me what's going on? So he comes back to me and he says, so Justin, because you also got ordained as a pastor in this last season, your reportable income is lower. But then also because you did not compromise the percentage that you've been giving to your local church, your income came significantly under the amount that you would need in order to pay capital gains. So instead, the government gave us back money instead of having to owe all this money. So it's like we had another month's rent come in at the perfect time. Man. So I'm like afraid, because if I didn't do my taxes, I wouldn't have had that money in time to be able to pay the month's mortgage. So it's kind of like, I don't know, sometimes it's as simple as doing the stupid and silly thing, what seems stupid and silly, to be able to figure out what that next step is. I think sometimes we can get so paralyzed and, well, what comes after that? What's the thing I'm supposed to do? Am I doing the wrong thing? Am I doing the right thing? But for me now, it's like, what can I do with what I have? And also, what is that inner voice saying to me? Like, am I going to compromise my beliefs, the mission that I'm locked onto in this season, to be able to do what everyone else is saying that I should be doing? Or am I going to believe in what I feel like God is saying inside of me and see him do the impossible in that scenario? And so I love stepping out in faith, though, and being able to have those stories to encourage other people that are struggling, whether it's financially or even people that are starting a business or trying to figure out what their passion is in life, starting a podcast, all that stuff. I'm like, come on, like, just take the steps. Something amazing is going to happen. And even if it's bad now, like, it could still be worked for good. Like, the scariest scenarios in my life have turned out to be some of the most highlighted moments that I've been able to use to encourage other people that have no idea what to do next.
This is definitely a thread. I mean, you've already said it and the whole introduction, but there is this thread of all these phases of your life being about looking at something that is seemingly impossible and saying, no, it's not. We're going to give it a shot, whether it's the Iceman days, the elevation days, and getting your family here to Charlotte, or, this new journey of the giving days. It's, super inspiring. And I know a lot of people are going to hear this and just be like incredibly wowed. I know I am. Like, what else can we do that we don't think we currently can? Justin, I want to ask you, have there been times in your life when you didn't trust yourself or didn't trust your inner voice, and how that turned out for you?
Yeah. Whew. Yes. Okay, let me go back to the elevation days. There was a moment where my wife and I, we were just going to sell everything we had and move down to Charlotte to be a part of the church, right? We had applied multiple times to opportunities down in Charlotte. Nothing was working out, but I felt like there was something internally that said I just needed to go. I needed to trust to go, and we'll leave. Well, at the same time, two things have happened. One, my wife was pregnant. And two, I was offered a new role. I was working at a bank, and I was offered a new role that they just created that they wanted me to step into. It would be a significant pay increase, and they were really excited, and they wanted me to lock into it for a year. So I felt like I had to make a decision. Am I going to just leave everything and move to Charlotte to be with my family where I felt called to, or do I stay here and provide for my family and the new baby that we would have? Mm-hmm. So after all of the no's, I felt like I needed to just say, I just needed to do the responsible thing. I will take the higher paying job, and I will pay for the new baby that's coming, all this stuff. And I will just kind of give up on the dream, right? Okay. So I do that. I say, we're not moving to Charlotte. I take the job, I step into it. And that first week, we lost the baby. We had a miscarriage. And it was very traumatizing for my wife, for myself. And I felt like I had directly tied my decision to us losing the baby. Like, I was very disappointed. I was sad. I was crushed. And I felt like I had wronged God. But I learned that I was wrong. Like, it wasn't tied to it, because this is not me saying that if people don't listen to God, that's what happened. That is not what happened at all. But our pastor had preached a message that weekend called how to deal with disappointment. That sometimes we'll blame other people, we'll blame the scenario, we'll blame our decisions, but sometimes we need to dig down to the root of it all to figure out what we can actually do with our circumstances and our situation, because we'll experience some type of trauma. We'll make a decision and feel like, well, it was never meant to be, and we will give up. But what ended up happening after I heard that message, my wife and I still felt called to be a part of the church because it was the only place that gave us healing. Yeah. And so we started driving from Pennsylvania to Charlotte on the weekends. It was about a 9-hour drive so that we could attend church, but then also pour into other people and encourage other people. And so that became the next stage of our journey, where we said, we'll be in Pennsylvania. I will work at this place for a year, but on the weekends, we're going to go to a place where we feel like we can be helped, we can be healed, and we can kind of see hope of what is next in the future. Yeah. And that decision is what ultimately led us to be able to be a part of Charlotte and to be a part of our church full time.
Yeah, man. Thank you for that incredible, powerful share. That was amazing. Really appreciate that, the vulnerability. Thanks. I think it just comes back to this idea that all things are possible. And I'm just curious for people listening, certainly you're a different person today than you were, that boy at 10 when said, hey, I wonder if that guy can make himself freeze in 60 degrees, I wonder if the opposite is possible. Like, how are you different today than that 10-year-old boy, having gone through all of these different trials where you've tested and proven that impossible is possible?
Yeah, I need to play off your words a little bit. How the little boy test and proven that with the impossible is now possible. If I were to go back to the 10-year-old Justin, I think that's what I would have told him. That's like, yes, with God, all things are possible. But really, I was afraid of moving forward at all, at testing anything, because I didn't know what was the right thing to test, because I had been listening to the voices of everybody else. But I would have told him, document the things that were happening along the way. The bad, write it down to see if it turned into good, and the good, lock onto those moments. I feel like back then, I was just afraid. I was afraid because I didn't know what would happen. But I think the thing that I've learned that has been the most helpful is just to try it. Just to try it and lock into any type of failure as feedback. That it's like, okay, that's not the right direction. Let's tweak it a little bit, try it again, and move in another direction. And that's the only thing that I kept doing for all the Iceman stuff, all the giving stuff. If there was a no, it's like I just kept knocking until I saw some door open. Yeah. And so I wish I could have encouraged him back then. But I feel like I am in a lot healthier space than 10-year-old Justin.
Yeah, well, you've inspired a lot of people, and I really want to encourage people listening to go to Amazon, get a copy of Becoming the Iceman, because it is an incredibly inspiring and empowering story. And I really enjoyed it, and I hope others will get a copy and listen. And for those listening, if they want to find out more about you, get in touch, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. My wife and I have a website. It's rosalesrecommendations.com. We have this YouTube and all the other things, but that's the place where they can learn more.
Amazing. The story is epic. It's 3 phases so far: the Iceman days, the elevation days, the giving days. Who knows what's coming next? But at some point, Hollywood's going to pick up on the Justin Rosales story, and they're going to want to make a movie about this epic journey. When they do, I want to know who's going to be the Hollywood actor that's going to play you in your movie.
That's funny. So as a kid growing up and even in my teens, I was told I looked a lot like George Clooney. So I would probably pick George Clooney.
Oh, yeah. That's a great one. George Clooney. Okay. What's the movie going to be called?
Probably Becoming the Iceman. I think it has to be.
Becoming the Iceman, starring George Clooney. I mean, It's going to be a blockbuster. I cannot wait. Justin, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. And for those listening, I hope you've been inspired today as much as I have. I hope Justin's story has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell or just need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. We'd also appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing or tagging Inspire Campfire in your social media. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thanks for listening. Justin, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Scott.